Hello everyone. Enjoy this relaxing moment as you watch. Obena, a wealthy billionaire, lived in a grand mansion overlooking the bustling city. Despite his immense wealth, he found no joy in the luxury surrounding him. Obena had everything he could ever want: business success, lavish cars, and a lifestyle most could only dream of. But the one thing missing was love. He desired a woman who would see beyond his riches, someone who would love him for his heart and soul. Tired of attracting superficial relationships, Obena devised a plan. He decided to disguise himself as a poor man living humbly until he found a woman who loved him for who he truly was. Leaving behind his designer suits and high-end cars, Obena moved into a modest house on the outskirts of the city. He dressed in simple clothes, wearing worn-out shoes and plain shirts, and took up the life of a carpenter. He kept to himself, working quietly in his workshop, crafting furniture and fixing things for his neighbors. In his humble disguise, he blended into the ordinary lives of the people around him. Days turned into weeks, and though people passed him by, few paid him any attention. But that was exactly what Obena wanted: a chance to observe people's true nature. In the same city, two close friends, Ada and Choma, lived together in a small apartment. The two women were like sisters, but their outlooks on life couldn't have been more different. Ada was kind-hearted and compassionate, believing that true love was more important than material wealth. She dreamed of finding someone she could love unconditionally, someone who would cherish her in return. Choma, on the other hand, was captivated by the allure of riches. She longed to marry a rich man, imagining a life of luxury and comfort where money solved all problems. Her eyes were always set on finding someone wealthy. One afternoon, as Ada and Choma walked through the market, they noticed a man sitting under the shade of a tree, looking tired and worn. It was Obena, taking a break from his carpentry work. His hands were covered in sawdust, and his clothes were simple and rough. Choma glanced at him with disdain. "Why would anyone live like that?" she muttered to Ada. "He looks like he has nothing going for him." Ada, however, felt a tug of compassion. She walked over to Obena and smiled. "Are you all right?" she asked gently. "You look tired. Can I bring you some water?" Obena was surprised by Ada's kindness. He wasn't used to being approached by strangers, especially when he appeared poor. "Thank you," he replied softly, accepting the offer. Choma, standing back, rolled her eyes. "You're wasting your time," she told Ada. "A man like him can't offer you anything." But Ada ignored her friend's words. She saw something in Obena's quiet demeanor, a kindness in his eyes that intrigued her. From that day on, Ada would stop by Obena's workshop regularly, bringing him food and water and offering conversation during his breaks. Over time, Ada and Obena grew close. She never asked him about his wealth or his background. To her, he was just a hardworking man trying to make a living, and that was enough. They talked about their dreams and aspirations, about life's struggles and joys. Obena found himself drawn to Ada's pure heart, her genuine kindness that had nothing to do with what he could give her. Meanwhile, Choma became increasingly distant. She had no interest in Obena, convinced that his appearance reflected his status in life. She continued her pursuit of wealthy suitors, hoping to find the riches she believed would bring her happiness. As their friendship deepened, Obena saw in Ada something he had longed for: someone who valued people for their character, not their wealth. He was torn, knowing that Ada cared for him without any idea of his true identity, but he wanted to be sure that her love was genuine, that it wasn't influenced by material things. One day, he decided to test both Ada and Choma. He approached the two women and asked for help. "I'm in a difficult situation," he said humbly. "I've run out of money and don't have enough to buy food. Could you help me?" Chioma's reaction was immediate. She frowned and stepped back. "Why should I help you?" she snapped. "You should have worked harder if you didn't want to be in this position." Without another word, she walked away, leaving Obena standing there. Ada, however, didn't hesitate. She went home and returned with a small basket of food, offering it to Obena with a warm smile. "It's not much, but it's what I have," she said softly. "I hope it helps." Obena's heart swelled with gratitude. Ada had once again shown her kindness, despite thinking he had nothing to offer in return. Time passed, and Obena knew that the moment had come to reveal his true identity. He could no longer keep his secret, especially when Ada had shown him such pure love. He invited both Ada and Choma to his grand mansion, asking them to meet him there for dinner. When they arrived, Choma was speechless. The mansion was vast, surrounded by beautiful gardens and fountains. "Whose house is this?" she asked in awe, her eyes wide with disbelief. Obena stepped forward, no longer in his carpenter's clothes but dressed in the finest suit. "This is my home," he said, his voice steady. "I am not the poor man you thought I was. I am Obena, a billionaire." Ada's eyes widened in shock, while Chioma's face lit up with excitement. "You're rich?" Chioma exclaimed, stepping closer to him. "I had no idea. If I'd known." Obena shook his head, disappointment clouding his face. "That's exactly why I didn't tell you," he replied. "You cared only for my wealth, not for me as a person. But Ada showed me kindness when she thought I had nothing." Obena turned to Ada, his heart full of love. "You treated me with compassion and respect when I appeared to be poor," he said, his voice softening. "You never asked for anything in return, and you loved me for who I am, not what I have. For that, I will always be grateful." Tears filled Ada's eyes as she realized the depth of Obena's feelings. She had fallen in love with his heart, never once caring about his wealth. "I loved you before I knew," she whispered, "and I love you still." Chioma, realizing her mistake, stood frozen in place. She had missed her chance because of her obsession with wealth. She had treated Obena poorly, believing he had nothing to offer, while Ada had won his heart with her kindness and humility. As Obena and Ada embraced, Chioma felt a pang of regret. She had spent so much time chasing riches that she had failed to see the value of true love and compassion. Obena and Ada were married in a grand ceremony that celebrated their love, not their wealth. People from all over the city attended, not because of Obena's riches, but because of the beautiful story of love and kindness that had brought them together. Ada, now living in the grand mansion with Obena, remained as humble as ever. She continued to treat everyone with the same kindness and compassion that had captured Obena's heart in the first place. Chioma, reflecting on her choices, realized too late that she had let her greed and judgment blind her to what truly mattered. She watched as her friend lived a life of happiness, not because of Obena's wealth, but because of the love they shared. Determined to change her ways, Chioma began focusing on building relationships based on kindness and genuine care rather than material gain. She knew that she had lost something precious, but she also knew it wasn't too late to learn from her mistakes. Obena and Ada's love story became a tale told throughout the city, a story of humility, compassion, and seeing beyond appearances. It was a reminder that true love is not about wealth or status, but about the heart. They used their wealth to help others, building schools, hospitals, and shelters for those in need. They lived a life of service, never forgetting where they came from or the lessons they had learned along the way. In the end, Obena and Ada found something far more valuable than riches. They found a love that could never be bought, a love that grew from kindness, respect, and understanding. Their story was a testament to the power of seeing people for who they truly are and the happiness that comes from loving with a pure heart. And though their wealth was vast, it was their love that made them truly rich. As the years went by, Obena and Ada continued to lead a life filled with purpose and compassion. Their love grew stronger with every challenge they faced together, and they became known not just for their wealth but for their generosity. They built schools in underserved communities, ensuring that every child had access to education, and they funded hospitals where people could receive care regardless of their ability to pay. Their wealth became a tool for creating a better world, and they remained deeply involved in the causes that mattered to them. Ada never let the wealth change her. She still visited the market, greeting the vendors who had known her for years. She still found joy in the simple things, caring for her garden, spending time with Obena, and engaging with the people who lived in their community. Her humility and grace became the foundation of their life together, and Obena admired her more with each passing day. Obena, too, stayed true to the values he had learned while living as a humble carpenter. Though he now wore fine suits and oversaw a vast business empire, He always remembered the days when he had nothing but his skills and determination. He treated his employees with respect and fairness, ensuring that everyone who worked for him had opportunities to grow and succeed. His businesses flourished not just because of his financial acumen but because of the way he cared for the people around him. One day, while walking through the gardens of their estate, Obena turned to Ada with a thoughtful expression. "You've taught me something I never expected to learn," he said softly. "I thought wealth would bring happiness, but it wasn't until I found you, someone who loved me for who I am, that I truly understood what it means to be rich." Ada smiled, taking his hand in hers. "Wealth comes in many forms," she replied, "but love, kindness, and humility, that's the greatest treasure anyone can have. We've been blessed with so much, and I'm grateful every day for the life we've built together." As they continued their walk, the sun setting behind them, Obena felt a deep sense of contentment. He had spent so many years searching for love in all the wrong places, believing that his wealth would either attract or repel people. But Ada had shown him that true love comes from the heart. Love transcends material things. In Ada, he had found a partner who loved him unconditionally, who saw beyond his wealth to the man he truly was. Meanwhile, Choma, though she had learned from her mistakes, still carried the weight of her regrets. She had watched Ada and Obena's love story unfold, and it had changed her. She no longer chased after wealthy men or sought relationships for status. Instead, she focused on building her own life, working hard to create something she could be proud of. She no longer envied Ada but admired her for the choices she had made and the love she had found. One day, Choma decided to reach out to Ada again. It had been a long time since they had spoken, and though Ada had forgiven her long ago, Choma still felt the need to make amends. She knocked on the door of the grand estate, feeling a mixture of nervousness and anticipation. Ada opened the door with her usual warm smile, greeting Choma with open arms. "It's good to see you," Ada said, her voice gentle. "Come in." Choma stepped inside, taking in the familiar surroundings. The mansion was as grand as ever, but there was a sense of warmth and simplicity that made it feel like a home rather than just a display of wealth. As they sat together, Choma found the words she had been holding back for so long. "I've been thinking a lot about the past," she began, her voice filled with sincerity. "I was so blinded by my desire for wealth that I couldn't see what really mattered. You were always kind to me, even when I didn't deserve it. I've changed since then, but I wanted to tell you that I'm sorry for the way I treated you and for how I judged Obena." Ada listened quietly, her heart full of understanding. "I forgave you a long time ago," she said softly. "We all make mistakes, Choma. What matters is that we learn from them and grow. I'm glad you found your own path." Choma nodded, feeling a sense of relief. "Thank you," she said. "You and Obena have built something beautiful, not because of the wealth, but because of the love you share. I'm happy for you." The two women sat together, reminiscing about old times and laughing over memories from their past. It felt good to reconnect, and Choma left that day feeling lighter, her heart at peace with the choices she had made. As time went on, Obena and Ada's love story continued to inspire others. People from all walks of life admired their humility, their generosity, and the way they had used their wealth to create positive change. They were living proof that true riches are found not in material possessions, but in the love and kindness we share with others. Their life was not without its challenges, no life ever is, but they faced each obstacle together, their bond growing stronger with each test. Whether it was a business setback or a personal loss, they leaned on each other, knowing that together they could overcome anything. Through it all, they remained humble, never forgetting the lessons they had learned in the early days of their relationship. Years later, as they sat on the porch of their mansion, watching the sun set over the horizon, Obena turned to Ada with a smile. "I still remember the day I met you," he said. "You offered me water when I had nothing to give in return. That was the moment I knew you were different." Ada laughed softly, resting her head on his shoulder. "I didn't care about what you had," she replied. "I saw the kindness in your eyes, and that was enough for me. Everything else, your wealth, your success, that's just a bonus. What matters most is that we have each other." And so their love endured, a shining example of what true wealth really is. a life filled with love, humility, and a heart open to kindness. They had built a legacy that went far beyond money, a legacy of compassion and generosity that would live on in the lives they had touched. In the end, Obena and Ada's greatest fortune wasn't the billions in their bank accounts, but the love they had found in each other. As the years rolled on, life for Obena and Ada remained a beautiful journey of love and service. Their love story had blossomed beyond anything they could have imagined, and their philanthropic work had transformed countless lives. However, in the background, Chioma's story had not yet reached its conclusion. Though Chioma had made peace with Ada and claimed to have left her past ways behind, deep inside, a seed of envy still lingered. No matter how much success she found in her own endeavors, she couldn't shake the feeling that Ada had the life she always dreamed of: love, wealth, and respect. Despite her attempts to suppress her jealousy, it slowly grew, feeding off her insecurities and regrets. One fateful afternoon, Chioma received news that an old business associate of Obena, Ki, had resurfaced. Ki had once been close to Obena but had fallen out with him over a failed business deal years ago. He still harbored resentment, and when he learned of Chioma's lingering jealousy, he saw an opportunity to strike at Obena. Ki approached Chioma with a plan that would see her reclaim what she believed was rightfully hers. "Obena took what should have been mine," he said, his voice low and calculated. "But with your help, we can both get what we deserve. You can take back what Ada has, her life, her love, and I can make sure Obena never rises again." Chioma hesitated. She had made amends with Ada and knew Obena had done nothing to deserve her betrayal, but the allure of having Obena's attention, of possibly winning his heart, clouded her judgment. She convinced herself that she was justified in her actions, that after all these years, she deserved to finally be happy. The plan was simple but dangerous. Chioma would manipulate Ada into believing that Obena was unfaithful. He would use his influence to plant false rumors about Obena's business dealings, creating a scandal that would tarnish his reputation and isolate him from his supporters. Together, they hoped to fracture the bond between Obena and Ada, leaving room for Chioma to step in. At first, the plan seemed to work. Chioma began subtly sowing seeds of doubt in Ada's mind. She would drop casual remarks about Obena's late meetings, his frequent business trips, and the young women in his company. Ada, who had always trusted Obena completely, began to feel a twinge of unease. The once unshakable foundation of their relationship trembled under the weight of Chioma's carefully crafted lies. Meanwhile, Ki's smear campaign against Obena's business took hold. False accusations and damaging rumors spread, and soon investors began to pull out, leaving Obena's empire vulnerable. Obena, unaware of the forces working against him, found himself overwhelmed by the sudden collapse of everything he had worked for. As the pressure mounted, he struggled to maintain his composure, and the distance between him and Ada grew. One evening, as Obena sat in his study going over the latest reports from his faltering company, Ada approached him, her heart heavy with doubt. "Obena," she began softly, "we need to talk." Obena looked up, sensing the tension in her voice. "What is it, Ada?" he asked, concern etched on his face. "I've heard things," Ada said, her voice trembling. "People are saying that you've been unfaithful, that you've been spending time with other women behind my back." Obena's eyes widened in shock. "Ada, you know that's not true. I've been focused on saving our business. There's no one else but you." But Ada's doubts had taken root, and despite Obena's reassurances, she couldn't shake the fear that maybe, just maybe, there was some truth to the rumors. The distance between them grew, and for the first time in their marriage, their trust was truly tested. In the midst of this turmoil, Chioma made her move. She began visiting Obena more frequently, offering him comfort and support as his business crumbled. She played the role of the concerned friend, but her intentions were far from pure. She hoped that in his moment of vulnerability, Obena would turn to her. But as Chioma drew closer to Obena, she began to see something she hadn't anticipated: his unwavering love for Ada. Despite the challenges they were facing, despite the rumors and the doubts, Obena's heart belonged wholly to his wife. Even in his darkest moments, when he could have sought solace in someone else, he remained committed to Ada. Choma, realizing that she could never take Ada's place in Obena's heart, began to feel the weight of her betrayal. The guilt gnawed at her, and she started to question whether her actions had been worth it. In her pursuit of wealth and love, she had hurt the very people who had shown her kindness. One night, unable to bear the guilt any longer, Choma went to Ada's home. She knocked on the door, her heart pounding in her chest. When Ada opened the door, her expression was cold, but she allowed Choma inside. "I need to tell you the truth," Choma said, her voice shaking. "I've done something terrible." Ada listened in silence as Choma confessed everything: the lies, the manipulation, the plan to destroy Obena's reputation. She spoke of Key's influence and how she had let her jealousy consume her. As the words spilled out, tears filled Chioma's eyes. "I thought I could take what you had," Choma whispered, her voice choked with regret. "But I've only made things worse. I'm so sorry, Ada. I never meant to hurt you like this." Ada stood there, processing the weight of Chioma's confession. Anger flashed through her, but beneath it was a deep sadness. She had trusted Choma, and now that trust had been shattered. But as Ada looked into Chioma's tear-filled eyes, she saw something else: remorse, true, heartfelt remorse. "I forgive you," Ada said quietly, though the pain was still fresh. "But forgiveness doesn't mean things can go back to the way they were. You need to make things right, not just with me, but with Obena as well." Choma nodded, knowing that Ada was right. The road to redemption would not be easy, but it was one she had to walk. She left that night, determined to set things right, no matter how long it took. The next morning she went to Obena's office. She found him surrounded by papers, the weight of the world on his shoulders. When he saw her, he looked tired but surprised. "Choma," he said, "what are you doing here?" "I'm here to tell you the truth," Choma replied, her voice steady. She explained everything: how she and Key had conspired against him, how she had let her jealousy drive her to betray him and Ada. Obena listened in silence, his face unreadable. When Choma finished, he sighed deeply. "Why?" he asked, his voice filled with pain. "Why would you do this?" "Because I thought I could take what Ada had," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "I thought I could make you love me. But I was wrong. I see that now." Obena shook his head, a mixture of sadness and disappointment in his eyes. "You could never take Ada's place," he said. "She's my heart, my soul. What we have goes beyond wealth or status, it's built on trust. And you've broken that." Choma lowered her head, tears streaming down her face. "I know," she whispered. "I'm sorry, Obena. I never should have done this." Obena was silent for a long moment before speaking again. "It's not me you need to seek forgiveness from," he said. "It's Ada. She's the one you hurt the most." With those words, Choma knew that her journey to redemption had only just begun. Her journey was far from over. She left Obena's office with a heavy heart, knowing that she had a long way to go before she could truly make amends. But she was determined to do whatever it took to set things right, no matter how difficult it would be. As Choma walked away from Obena's office, her mind swirled with regret and determination. She knew that forgiveness wouldn't come easily, not from Ada, not from Obena, and not even from herself. The weight of her actions pressed down on her like a heavy stone, but she was ready to face the consequences, no matter how painful. Meanwhile, Obena returned home that evening, his heart conflicted. He had always been a man of understanding and compassion, but Chioma's betrayal had shaken him deeply. As he sat with Ada later that night, their conversation was filled with an uneasy silence. Ada, who had been distant over the past few weeks, finally spoke up, her voice tinged with both sadness and hope. "Obena, I know things haven't been easy between us lately," she began, her eyes fixed on her hands resting in her lap. "I've been carrying doubts and fears that I should have shared with you sooner." Obena nodded, his gaze softening. "Ada, I can't blame you for feeling that way. I should have noticed how much the rumors were affecting you. I should have reassured you more." Ada looked up, her eyes glistening. "It's not just that. I let Chioma's words get to me, and I didn't trust you like I should have. I'm sorry for doubting you." Obena reached across the table and took her hands in his. "We both made mistakes," he said gently. "But what matters is that we're here now, willing to work through them together. The sincerity in his voice brought a tear to Ada's eye. For the first time in weeks, she felt the warmth of their bond return, like a long-lost friend. They sat in comfortable silence, their hearts healing as they found solace in each other's presence. As the days passed, Choma took steps toward redemption. She severed ties with Ki, who, in his bitterness, tried to sabotage her reputation. But Choma stood her ground, refusing to let her past define her future. She distanced herself from the toxic influences in her life and began volunteering at a local charity, pouring her energy into helping others in an attempt to heal her soul. Though Ada had forgiven her, the road to repairing their friendship was a long one. Choma understood that trust wasn't something that could be rebuilt overnight. She didn't push for forgiveness but instead allowed her actions to speak for her. Slowly, Ada began to see the changes in her former friend. The envy that had once fueled Choma's every move was gone, replaced by a quiet humility and a genuine desire to make amends. One afternoon, months after Choma's confession, Ada received a letter. It was from Choma, written in a simple but heartfelt tone. In the letter, Choma expressed her deep remorse, not just for the pain she had caused, but for allowing her insecurities to drive a wedge between them. "I know I can never undo the hurt I caused," Choma wrote. "But I hope, in time, we can rebuild the friendship we once had. You've always been an inspiration to me, Ada, and I regret letting my jealousy blind me to that." Ada read the letter carefully, her heart softening with each word. She had always been a forgiving person, but Choma's actions had cut deep. Still, she could see that Choma had changed, that she was no longer the same woman who had tried to manipulate her. Later that evening, Ada shared the letter with Obena. He smiled as he read it, nodding in approval. "She's trying," Obena said. "She's really trying to make things right." "I can see that," Ada replied. "And I think I'm ready to take a step toward forgiving her." Truly forgiving her. With Obena's support, Ada invited Choma over for tea the following weekend. When Choma arrived, she was nervous, unsure of how the meeting would go. But the moment she saw Ada's warm smile at the door, her fears began to melt away. They sat together in the garden, sipping tea and talking about their lives. For the first time in years, there was no tension between them, only an understanding that they had both grown from the experience. Choma apologized again, not out of obligation, but out of genuine remorse. Ada, in turn, shared her own struggles, admitting that she had held on to bitterness longer than she should have. By the end of the afternoon, it was clear that their friendship would never be the same as it once was, but it could evolve into something new, something stronger. Both women had learned valuable lessons about trust, forgiveness, and the importance of true friendship. As Choma left Ada's home that day, she felt lighter, as though a burden had been lifted from her shoulders. She had lost much, but in the end, she had gained something far more important: clarity, humility, and the chance to start anew. And as for Obena and Ada, their love continued to flourish. They had weathered the storm together and, in doing so, had come out stronger on the other side. Their bond, once tested by doubt and deceit, was now fortified by trust and resilience. Together, they continued to build their empire, not just of wealth, but of kindness, generosity, and love. In the years that followed, their story became a beacon of hope for others, a reminder that love, when built on a foundation of trust and forgiveness, could withstand any challenge. And as they looked toward the future, hand in hand, they knew that no challenge would ever break the bond they had worked so hard to rebuild. No matter what came their way, they would face it together. As the months went by, Obena and Ada continued to strengthen their bond, leaving behind the shadows of the past. Choma, too, had settled into her new life, focusing on making amends and staying true to her promise of change. But just as everything seemed to return to normal, a new storm began brewing. One afternoon, while Obena was finalizing a deal with a potential investor, he received unexpected news. A new player had entered the business world, one with a reputation for being both ruthless and charming. A man named Emeka. His wealth was vast, his influence widespread, and his ambition knew no bounds. It wasn't long before Emeka set his sights on the same investment opportunities that Obena had been pursuing. In a matter of weeks, Obena found himself competing with this new rival in nearly every business venture he touched. But there was something more unsettling than just the business competition. Emeka seemed to have an interest in Ada as well. At a glamorous charity event, Emeka made his first move. He approached Ada with smooth confidence, his words laced with charm. "I've heard much about you, Ada," he said. "It's rare to meet a woman with both beauty and intelligence. Obena is a very lucky man." His eyes lingered on her, sending an uneasy feeling through Ada, though she tried to remain polite. "I'm sure you've heard a lot about us," Ada replied coolly, not wanting to engage further in the conversation. But Emeka wasn't one to give up easily. Over the next few weeks, his presence loomed larger. He began attending the same events as Obena and Ada, subtly inserting himself into their social circle. He made offers to investors and business partners that undercut Obena's, forcing him to work twice as hard to maintain his standing. But it was his personal interest in Ada that troubled Obena the most. One evening, as Obena and Ada were preparing to leave a business dinner, Emeka intercepted them. "Ada, it's always a pleasure to see you. I wonder, would you join me for lunch tomorrow? I'd love to hear more about your work." His eyes gleamed with a mix of curiosity and intent. Before Ada could respond, Obena stepped forward, his tone firm. "We appreciate your interest, Emeka, but Ada's schedule is full. We have many upcoming projects together." Obena's protective stance didn't go unnoticed, and Emeka's smile widened. "Of course," Emeka said with a knowing look. "But you should know, Obena, business is not the only game I play. Some things can't be controlled by money alone." With that cryptic remark, he walked away, leaving both Ada and Obena feeling unsettled. Back home, Obena couldn't shake the feeling of unease. "He's not just after the business," Obena said, pacing the living room. "He's trying to get to you, Ada." Ada, though shaken by Emeka's behavior, tried to reassure Obena. "He can try, but he'll never come between us. I love you, Obena, and no amount of charm or money could ever change that." But Emeka's influence continued to grow. He charmed investors, forged powerful alliances, and even managed to sway a few of Obena's longtime business partners. The competition was fierce, but Obena was determined not to let Emeka win. He threw himself into his work, spending late nights at the office strategizing ways to counter Emeka's moves. While Obena fought the battle in the boardroom, Emeka's subtle advances toward Ada continued. He sent her expensive gifts, each one more lavish than the last. Though Ada promptly returned them, he left notes complimenting her intelligence and beauty, always trying to get under her skin. Ada, though increasingly frustrated, refused to engage with him. However, one evening, Emeka made his boldest move yet. During a charity auction, he bid an exorbitant amount of money for a piece of art that Ada had donated to the event. When the auctioneer announced that Emeka had won, the entire room applauded, and all eyes turned to Ada. She felt the pressure mounting as Emeka stood and gave her a sly smile. After the event, Emeka approached Ada once again. "It seems I've won more than just a painting tonight," he said, his voice dripping with confidence. "But don't worry, I have no intention of pressuring you. I only hope that one day you'll see the value in what I offer." Ada, furious but composed, replied, "I see the value in integrity, loyalty, and love, things you clearly don't understand, Emeka. Obena is everything I could ever need, and no amount of money or charm will ever change that." For the first time, Emeka's smile faltered. He had grown used to getting what he wanted, and Ada's rejection stung. But he wasn't done yet. As he left the event, he muttered to himself, "We'll see about that." The following weeks became a battleground. Emeka escalated his efforts to sabotage Obena's business, using underhanded tactics to poach clients and undermine deals. The tension between Obena and Ada grew as Obena became consumed with trying to outmaneuver Emeka. Though supportive, began to feel the strain of the constant pressure and the fear that Emeka's relentless pursuit might wear Obena down. One fateful day, Emeka made a final desperate play. He managed to buy out a company that Obena had been working tirelessly to acquire for months. It was a devastating blow, and for the first time, Obena felt defeated. But instead of wallowing in the loss, Obena turned to Ada. "I can't let this man ruin our lives. he said, taking her hands in his. No matter what he does in business, it's you and me against the world. That's what matters. Ada smiled, her heart swelling with love. You're right. We can rebuild anything as long as we have each other. In the end, Emeka's pursuit of both Ada and business power proved fruitless. Obena and Ada's unwavering commitment to each other was a force stronger than any wealth or charm Emeka could wield. Though the business competition remained, it became clear that love, real, honest love, was something money could never buy. If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing heartwarming stories almost every day. We are very grateful for your support. See you soon.